Networking and Marketing Made Simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited about today's episode. Again, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but I love having other mentors and coaches on here, especially those that are authors and founders of companies and the things that we're going to talk about today with Marianna's company called Might in Motion. Really solves a lot of problems for the people that are in corporate America that want to be what she considers the managers of managers, and really kind of focusing on, again, solving problems. And I think anyone that is running a successful business, anyone that is really impacting people in a positive way, you're providing solutions for people's problems. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So welcome to today's episode.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Scott. I have been looking forward to this all day.
Well, I am equally grateful to have you here today. So let's rewind the tape before we go forward. So if you could rewind the tape and stop at a particular point in your life, in your business journey that you feel was the catalytic moment that kind of set you on this path that you're now currently on, what would that moment be for you?
Oh, that's a great question. So I've been in corporate America for coming on 25 years now. And I don't know if it's one specific moment, but the culmination of many moments, right? So everybody always looking for the silver bullet. And I actually think there's like 1,000 golden BBs. I think it's the same thing when it comes to motivation and moving people forward. I had so many people that would come to me one-off and just say, hey, I really would like your advice on this particular situation, or I really enjoyed being on your team and I want to lead my new team similarly to the way you built a culture on your team. Can you help me through that? Help me work through that process. And it got to the point where I was like, well, why don't I make this on a broader scale? And so I started the podcast, and then I decided to write a book, and now I'm starting to build workshops. So it's all just kind of started to really gain momentum as that ball starts rolling. But it just came down to having so many people knocking on the door that I said, I want to open the door wider.
Well, and again, all those things, I just love people's pivotal moments because everyone has a different one that kind of put them on that path that they're on.
Mm-hmm.
And so many doors of opportunities open up along the way that is just, very impactful. So with everything that you've done and still do in corporate America, and now how you help others in corporate America, before you got into helping others, who do you feel was one of the best teachers for you in corporate that you learned so many lessons from that you still carry with you today and how you help other people now?
Oh, that's another, you have a lot of great questions, Scott. I should have known this coming in. So there was a few I've learned from some people that weren't so great as far as leaders, knowing, hey, I don't want to copy that. Right. But I also had some really strong ones that I actually pursued to be on their teams because I wanted to work for them and learn from them. Purposely took lateral moves on multiple occasions just so I could learn from them. So one that comes to mind right away is a gentleman by the name of John Drake. He was a phenomenal and still is a phenomenal leader. I don't work for him anymore. He's on to much bigger and better things. But he had a way of really looking at strategy that was different than anything I had ever experienced before. And so I knew I wanted to just be able to have more opportunities to sit in the room with him. Right. And so being aware of those people that you admire, that you want to learn from, that might mean taking a lateral into a position that you may not be an expert in, right? Because we're always like, I can't go after that job. I don't know everything on it. Well, you know what? That's okay. What you want to know is what can you contribute? How can you elevate the team? And then what are you going to get out of that movement into that position?
Yeah, movement, no matter what industry that you're in, whether you're, self-employed or, building your own business and, obviously working for someone else, Nancy and I always talk about we're not trees, so just move. We don't have to stand still if we don't want to. Now, interesting question here. You work a ton in corporate, obviously still do, and the clients that you're serving now. In the time of when you started in corporate to where it is right now, what would you say outside of technology and all those things that are currently evolving, obviously, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen from an infrastructure point of view, from chain of command, level of seniority? What are some of those big changes that you've seen shift since you've entered into the corporate world?
I think the biggest shift, which impacted everybody, was COVID. Right. And that's probably like a canned answer nowadays, but it really was a phenomenal shift in many people's mindsets of, I go into work into an office on a Friday. On Monday, I'm no longer going into the office, but I have to keep the momentum going for myself. I've got to stay motivated. But how do I motivate my teams that are now not just, I can't just walk 2 seconds and be there. Right. And that to me was probably one of the biggest changes that most teams went through. I was lucky enough that I had already in the past had teams that were remote that were working for me. And so it was a little bit of an easier pivot to be like, okay, well, you know what? I've done this before. What skills can I re-leverage now? Unfortunately, I would say probably 75% of people that were impacted that way didn't have that in their toolkit, right? Beforehand. And so that's probably been the biggest shift. And then now there's that shift back, right? So now there's that repivot where you see portions of the workforce going back into an office. And then same thing, you as an individual being a contributor to the team, how do you make sure you pivot your mindset so that you're remaining positive? You're still that go-to person that people want to be around, right? That people want you on your team so that you can continue to drive value for the overall organization.
Being a person of value is something that my wife and I constantly talk about because those are the go-to people. So you want to be a resource for other people. You don't want to just share all your knowledge and your wisdom and just not give it to other people, because it's beyond just giving in order to give, getting and giving. It's got to be that law of reciprocation, right? You have to give in order to get. And I think there's a big misconception, not just in the entrepreneurial world, but I also think in the corporate world. Everyone kind of, tends to keep things to themselves. Being someone of service and information and of value, it goes such a long way, not just in just general life, but in the business world, because those are the people that have those lights shined on them. But nothing feels better than knowing that you've given value to other people without expecting anything back in return, and knowing that you've made their life better in some way, shape, or form. How impactful has it been for you being in that position, being a person who provides great services for other people, that is a person of value? How has that benefited you and what you're doing?
Me, it's huge, right? And it's been huge my entire career. I don't know if it's part of it's because of how I was raised, right? The other piece is, which also goes back to how I was raised, is I grew up watching The Godfather. And this might seem a little bit odd, but there is that mentality of, I'm coming to you on your daughter's, wedding, and I'm asking you for a favor, which means at some point there's probably going to be some sort of reciprocation of that favor, right? And so I'm a big proponent of, I'm going to do favors for a lot of folks, because I hope that day never comes where I'm coming to you where I need a favor in return. But if I do, I've built enough credibility of being somebody who gives service that they're going to want to help me out too. Right. And so when you are in that corporate space, what that translates to is you've got to work across silos. Right? You can't just be the operations person, or just the finance person, or just the transportation person, or whatever silo applies to your particular company, you have to be able to talk the talk and work across all those silos. The people that can do that the best are, number one, probably the most satisfied with their job, right? Because they now have the tools and the people and the resources. They also the ones that are sought after, right? So it gives you more opportunities for advancement and growth in your career, because now you're not just seen as, oh, you know what, Marianna, she only knows operations. She doesn't know anything else. So, this job opportunity is over here in IT. So we're not even going to consider her. Well, if I've had relationships with people in IT and I've supported them on initiatives that might have an impact to operations, right? Now I could be seen as being maybe a viable candidate. That she might be really good at leading this team, or she might be really good at managing this project, because she's proven that she's going to look at the whole picture, not just her individual piece. Also, that kind of leads into when you don't just look at how your one little piece of the pie is impacted, but you start thinking about the whole pie. That means as a company, the whole company improves, right? You don't want to just be looking at your cost out. I don't care about Scott. I don't care about yours. I know I'm going to cost in for you. I'm impacting your operations, your people. I don't care, because you're saving me. I'm saving money. That doesn't make sense. You have to think holistically, because then we both elevate.
Now, as far as Might in Motion,
Mm-hmm.
how did that all come about? Because obviously you're serving people in the corporate space. So what was the moment for you where you're like, you know what, I need to create something to help other people in the way that I've helped myself?
Yeah. So the first thing was, I was at a coaching event, an in-person event, and I saw people getting on stage, and I thought, man, I want to be on stage. How do I get invited to that stage? And then I was like, well, why am I waiting for somebody to invite me? I'm going to create my own stage. Like, why am I waiting? And so I pivoted when I got back home. I said, okay, let me think, how can I do this? Oh, Gary Vee goes live on LinkedIn. Well, if Gary Vee can do it, surely Marianna Kinnee can do it, right? Even though he has a whole production team and, all those things. And so I decided to just go live on LinkedIn. And that then pivoted into a brand, it pivoted into a podcast, and it's pivoted into all these other things. And I think the growth has been because people are getting value from it. They're getting value from the message of hearing from entrepreneurs, from doctors, from other people in corporate America, founders, CEOs, individuals like yourself. They're seeing that value and getting those nuggets that they can then grow and apply in their day-to-day life.
It's so impactful to be invigorated and inspired to do something. And I can relate to that because, I've been teaching people how to leverage LinkedIn for, God, almost 11 years now. And it was the same thing. I was at a live event and people were talking about the law of conversation, the law of connection, the law of networking. And I said, where can I do that most efficiently and effectively? And that's when kind of LinkedIn popped into my brain. And the rest, they say, is history. It's led to the books, the podcast, the speaking, the courses, the programs, all of that. And it's being a solution-oriented person. So identifying a problem and filling that problem with a solution for the marketplace that you're serving. And I think that is something that's really important for people to understand, that you don't want to, people ask me all the time, like, how do you make sure that what you're putting out there is going to be bought or sold, or, obviously people are going to want? Well, it's making sure that what you're actually creating or offering that target audience or that target market is solving a problem that they have. Most people don't buy certain things or join certain things because it's not of value to them, because it's not focused on the problem that they're having. So if someone was to ask Marianna the difference between what she focuses on and what she teaches on within corporate that other people may be teaching as well, what would you tell that person that is the differentiating factor between you and Might in Motion compared to other things that may be out there?
I think that the big difference is that I try to focus on 4 main pillars. So I want to help people understand first, what's their motivation? What's their real why? Sometimes when you're in corporate America, that gets lost because you can feel like you're becoming a cog, right? And so you still have to figure out what's your why within that business and what's motivating you and what you're doing. When you know what that motivation is, right, then you could go to the momentum, which is that second M, right? How do you start then creating that repetitive forward motion? To your point earlier, like you're a tree, you want to be able to move, right? If you are not moving, if you're not creating some of that growth and opportunity for yourself, you're stuck. And once you get stuck, it's very hard to get unstuck, right? The third one is your mindfulness, right? So that can layer in a spiritual side, it can layer in your mental wellness, depending on who you are. Many times, once again, you have corporate America, mentors, mentee, formal programs within corporate America. You don't always touch base on that, right? Sometimes that's considered taboo. But if you can work with somebody who's slightly removed from that, like myself or others, right, you're able to actually start tapping into, is there something else going on? Is there something at a deeper level that maybe you need to address? Or maybe, there's just something out there, and how do you get the right tools to deal with that? And then the final one is your might. And that to me is your overall physical well-being. Right. So people talk about, hey, when you walk in the room, are you walking in the room with your confidence, with a presence? And sometimes that relates to how well are you taking care of yourself? And that's something where I like to bring in people who are nutritionists and fitness coaches and those type of advisors, because they can help bring you a different perspective on something that might be impacting your career that you wouldn't even have thought of.
Yeah, I think it's bringing things to the surface, and something that my wife and I always talk about is that you can't see the label from inside the jar, right?
Mm,
So when people
mhm.
are kind of like in it, you
Yes.
can't really see or acknowledge what is going on. Sometimes it takes those extra set of eyeballs to
Yep.
acknowledge certain things that are going on that can be improved, and obviously moved in the right direction. Before we start to wind down, where do you see uh, the corporate workplace moving? Obviously things have shifted mightily since COVID. Obviously, many of those environments are somewhat back to normal. But what do you see for the corporate world in the next 12 to 18 months, and any big changes that you see on the horizon?
I think the big thing is that there's going to be and continue to be a bigger focus on overall well-being of associates. And being able to recognize that there's that mental fatigue, there's that mental just having clarity and having good positive mindset. I think that's going to become more and more of a focus, and not so much as a throwaway term, right? Where, oh, we care about you as the whole person, right? Well, I think there's actually going to be more and more leaders who are now investing into their associates on that one-on-one, face-to-face type of relationship, right? So it's not something that's pushed down as this big corporate initiative, but individuals are taking it on themselves to say, hey, you know what, I need to pour into my team. And they're going to see that their team is going to pour back into them. That's where you really create some really cool magic. And I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of COVID, because people realize, like, wow, this had a big impact on everyone in different ways, but it was one rallying experience that everybody went through, right? When else in history has everybody gone through one experience to that extreme?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely there were a lot of, it was a very traumatizing time
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people, but there was so much good that came out of it. Big changes that are gonna, if it wasn't COVID, it was going to be something else that was going to evolve people in a
Right.
different way. So if it's not one thing, it's going to be another. Now, before I get to my final question, if people are interested to learn more about you, your services, Might in Motion, all of those things that you have going on, tell the audience a little bit about what you have going on right now, what's coming up, and how people can connect with you on and offline.
So great place to reach me is mightinmotion.com. All my socials are on there. You don't have to worry about figuring out how to spell my name. So that's probably the easiest way to connect. You can also connect on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I respond to all of any messages. That's me responding. It's not AI. It's not some random person. It's me. So if you are interested, connecting that way, always a great resource. So things coming up. I'm excited. I'm going to be doing an in-person event in Idaho in January. I don't know when this is going to drop. It's going to be a very small event with Pantheon Live. So I'm super excited about that. And yeah, so if people are interested, they can always reach out to me directly. There'll be more events in the future.
Awesome. And all the information that Marianna just dropped, obviously, will be in the description of this episode, and the email that you received, obviously, to where you're listening to this now. So you're not going to have to travel too far. So, Marianna, final question before we sign off today. What does success truly mean to you?
Success to me is leaving a legacy that my girls can be proud of. And I want them to look at their mom and just be like, wow, okay, she worked really hard. She poured into us, and now they want to pour into others.
Yeah, I love that. It's the generational legacy. It's,
Yeah.
what our kids see is what we do. And again, we have an 11-year-old, and obviously he sees from afar what we're doing and how available we are. I coach his baseball team, and it's just, kids are very impressionable, but to your point, the legacy that, and we don't have to wait until we're gone to leave it. We're leaving it every single day that we're here.
Yeah.
And it's really keeping that in mind. So, Marianna, thank you again so much for being here today. Just grateful for you and the information that you shared. And I really encourage everyone listening to this to, if there was something that hit home and really struck a chord, they should definitely reach out to you. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank you so much for the invite. This was awesome. I really appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. So again, all the information on how to connect with Marianna is going to be in the description and the show notes of this episode. And as always, wherever you're listening to this to and from, if you're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, really make sure that you subscribe, leave us a rating and review, let us know what you loved, but more importantly, let us know what you want to hear more of. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with, and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everyone, for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.